I'm working on getting back to creating content on a regular basis on the channel, and I thought it would be a good idea to do a monthly question and answer session. What kind of spurred this off is some of the comments that I get on videos are more technical type questions, and I often wonder if I'm explaining things enough in word format when I answer those, or if my reply makes sense. Did I include enough information or not enough? So I thought sometimes it's better to answer your questions and even comments at some points in video format where I can actually talk and explain my answer versus just typing it out. I try to reply to every comment that I get on the channel. I give it an honest effort. I'm sure there's some that I've missed over the years because things slip through the cracks or I forget, but I honestly try to reply to every single comment I get, whether it's good or bad. Because my viewpoint has always been, if you are willing to take the time out of your day to leave a quick comment or a long comment on one of my videos, then I can certainly take the time to reply to that comment. So the way that I would like to work this is to give a little bit of a thank you to you, the viewer, as well. So if I choose one of your comments or questions to answer in one of these videos, what I would like for you to do, if you want, is send me an email at wickedartstudio@gmail.com with your name and your mailing address, and I will send you a couple of my business stickers free of charge, just as a way of saying thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for taking the time to watch my videos and leave your comments and questions. So to kick it off, the first question that I chose for this first video came from Foxy and Molly, who wrote, "Hi, great work. I wonder, are you using Airbrush for the candy mix or maybe minigun?" This question is a good question because I didn't cover it in the actual video, but they were referring to when I was spraying the candy over the top of the fire on this fuel tank, which was actually my last video. And it depends on what I'm doing. In this case, I used the airbrush simply because I've got a lot of black and white artwork that I want to remain black and white on this particular motorcycle. The fire colors, I wanted to keep bright, vibrant fire colors, but the rest of the artwork, I wanted to keep a black and white appearance. So in this case, I chose to use the airbrush and very carefully sprayed the candy around all of the black and white artwork. I do that freehand, and I also use freehand shields to assist me in keeping all of that clean. There are other methods to do this as well. You could mask all of this off with transfer tape or even masking tape, either cutting around it or just masking around the edges. The downside to masking something like this off when you're going to apply multiple layers of paint over the top of it is you're going to leave a raised paint edge. I don't like raised edges on my artwork. I can bury it later with clear, but it takes more work, it takes more product and more sessions of clear to bury those. I want to keep it nice and smooth and as flat as I possibly can throughout the artwork process to make my job easier in the end. In cases where I'm spraying only fire or all of the artwork is going to be in the same tones as the fire, I will absolutely use a minigun or even a full-size gun depending on what I'm working on. So for example, the skull on the front or in front of the black and white skull on this particular tank is the same colors as the fire. So I sprayed the candy over all of this skull as well. In cases like that, where the artwork is going to be in the same color spectrum as the fire or whatever effect I'm painting the candy over, then yes, I'll use a spray gun because one, it speeds up the process. I can lay the candy down a lot faster. There's probably 4 to 5 coats of the candy on this job. And 2, I can spray it more evenly with a spray gun than I can with an airbrush. So it really depends on what I am doing. I use both methods, but the method that I choose to use is kind of dependent on the project that I'm working on as well. Great question. The other two questions that I chose to answer in this video go hand in hand. The first one is from Remlya, R-E-M-L-Y-A, who wrote, do you ever wear a respirator when airbrushing? I read about a guy that died of cancer from inhaling paint, which migrated to his internal organs from inhaling it. I get this question a lot. It's a good question, and it's yes and no is my answer. You will not see me, or very rarely see me, wearing a respirator or even a mask in my YouTube videos because I'm generally trying to teach. I need to be able to talk. It's hard to understand what I'm saying when there's something covering my face. I do wear a respirator anytime I'm spraying with a spray gun or even a minigun or even the airbrush and I'm covering a large area where I'm putting a lot of particulates and overspray into the air. I will wear a respirator, which is this right here. And you can see I need to change the cartridges in this one. This one is primarily just used for the water-based paint, so they last a little bit longer even when they're dirty. The respirator, in my opinion, and I'm not an expert on this topic, is overkill for general airbrushing when you're creating artwork. Most of the time, we are working at relatively low pressure and pretty close to the surface doing detail type work. Yes, you are still putting overspray and particulates into the air, but not even remotely close to the same level as you are when you're covering a large area with an airbrush or you're using a spray gun. So you can get away with using just a particulate dust mask. And here's why I like the dust mask compared to the full-blown respirator. It's not uncommon for me to airbrush for 8 to 10, sometimes even 12 hours in a day, depending on what I'm working on and how far behind I am. The respirator is not comfortable to wear for extended periods of time like that. This is a lot more comfortable. It's easier on me, in my opinion, to wear something lighter and something that's just as good, because this has the particulate filter on the dust mask. It's not just a dust mask. It's a lot more comfortable to wear this for extended periods of time compared to the respirator. Now, part of the reason that I switched to using water-based paints almost 20 years ago or so now was for the health benefits. I'm not exposed to the harsh chemicals that I was exposed to for 15 years before that when I was using solvent-based paint. That's a very small part of the reason why I switched to the water-based paint. There are other reasons why, but that was a small part of it. So, do I wear the dust mask on a regular basis like I probably should? If I'm honest with myself and honest with all of you, no, I really don't. When I'm putting more overspray into the air, if I'm trying to cover a larger area, I will put it on. But for general airbrushing, most of the time, I don't. And that's my personal choice, just like it's your personal choice. Is it a better idea to have it on to protect yourself from inhaling those contaminants that are in the air? Absolutely. But that's my personal choice, and I'm not going to harp on other people. Is it a good idea? Yes, because if you don't have your health, if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to paint. So it's your decision, but I only use the full-blown respirator when I'm spraying with a spray gun or covering something, a large area that's going to put a lot of overspray into the air. The other times, and sometimes even the dust mask works for if I'm airbrushing a larger area, but I don't wear one every single time I'm painting either. That's just being realistic. The last question comes from Southpaw5483, who wrote, thank you for sharing. Is there a need for a spray booth, extractor, reducing fumes? Your thoughts are welcome. It's a good question, and from a hobbyist perspective, I'm not sure what this was referring to, whether this was referring to like the little hobby paint booths that you can get for scale models, or if they were actually referring to a full-blown spray booth or an extractor fan. A full-blown spray booth is not for the hobbyist. If you're not making a living doing this, then you don't need to spend that kind of money. That's ridiculous. Even the smaller motorcycle type spray booths are still pretty expensive at the end of the day. When it comes to, again, airbrushing, general artwork, like what I teach, most of the time you're spraying at a relatively lower end pressure, between say 10 and maybe 25 or 30 psi. So you're not putting a ton of material into the atmosphere. It depends on where your workspace is too, whether you have good ventilation, if you're working in a garage or a shed, or my studio where I do most of my work. This is my house. I work from my house. The studio is located in my home, and I don't have I do have some ventilation here, but it's nothing like the spray booth. But when you come to general airbrushing, there are tricks and other things that you can use that will help mitigate that problem. And one of them that's been around for years, this was not my idea, but if you've never seen it, I'll share it with you, is to go buy a cheap box fan. This is like a $20 or $25 box fan at the big box store, or you can order one online. I think it's about 20 inches by 20 inches. What you want to do is then go buy a cheap 1-inch thick filter that is pretty close to the same size as your box fan. When you turn this fan on, it will hold that filter in place. If you set this near your work area, this will actually help to suck the overspray through the filter and out of the atmosphere. You can see this one's discolored because I've actually used it for that exact purpose previously. You can grab some bungee cords or something and wrap it around just to hold the filter in place, but I've found that as long as the fan is on and running, it'll hold the filter there well enough. As long as you don't bump it, even knocking it around, it still holds it in place relatively well. So that's a really good trick for a very low cost that will help to control or mitigate some of the overspray when you are airbrushing. So I hope all of that made sense. I hope my answers to those questions were thorough enough. Remember, if I chose to answer one of your questions in this video, please send me an email at wickedartstudio@gmail.com, and I will send you a few of my business stickers and maybe even some other business stickers. Depends on what I have on hand at the time. I hope you guys got something out of this. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and share. I'm Trevor with Wicked Art Studio. I will see you all next time.